is very hard to say who are my favorite writers, my favorite books. So, by far, in my opinion, the absolute most amazing, best nonfiction writer who just literally destroys me every single time I read something by him is Michael Lewis, which it's almost cruelly unfair how good he is and how bad he makes everyone else feel about themselves. But he's fun to read. In terms of nonfiction books that I love, Hiroshima by John Hershey is just an amazing example of what nonfiction, literary nonfiction can be. Trying to think, besides that I read a lot of crap. Like, when I'm writing nonfiction I can't read nonfiction, and so I end up reading a lot of like bad science fiction. I reread Ender's Game the other day. And I like The Magicians by Lev Grossman. Trying to think what else I've read. I can't even think of anything. I was reading this awful vampire novel last night that like literally was like so bad. It was clearly, it was the wrong gender for it because they kept on they're like, she's in love, and it wasn't Twilight, but it was like Twilight. And it was, I felt deeply ashamed of myself for having read it. And then I just kept on turning the pages. Yeah, nothing very highbrow. The most challenging thing to grapple with, I think, as a nonfiction, I hope I am a literary nonfiction writer, is structure, right? So I spent a lot of time reading John McPhee and trying to figure out how he does structure. And his books are essentially like almost magazine articles because they're not that long, or his magazine articles where he talks about structure, or because in magazines people can experiment with structure in a way that over a book the odds are too high. So I'm a newspaper journalist, and so as a result I've learned how to write under any environment and how to just write under deadline, which is a great, great skill. I will say this, that two things happen. Number one, all of my organization about reporting is guided by a call list, what I call a call list. And so the first thing that I do is I literally just write down the names of people that I want to call, and I just start calling them. And the point of those conversations are actually to be these very frustrating conversations where I'm essentially asking them to think for me. So I don't even, so usually, oftentimes one of my first questions will be, I'm not certain what questions I should ask you. I really don't, like, I really shouldn't be bothering you. Can you tell me what I should be doing? And my goal is to get them to sort of think that I'm kind of this mildly intelligent idiot who like is wasting their time, and to get them thinking for me. Because a call is always more efficient than reading. It's always better to pick up the telephone and call someone than it is to pick up a journal article and try and figure it out. So fundamentally I'm interested in two things when it comes to writing. I'm interested in structurally what surprises a reader, right? What do you not expect to read that causes you kind of this delightful engrossment that you can't turn down? I'm interested in how you achieve that. And then, and this is kind of a corollary to that, I'm interested in power, and I'm interested in the structural commoditization of power, right? So I'm not necessarily just talking about political power. I'm talking about power over ourselves. That's what The Power of Habit is about, is how we gain structural control over our own actions. Or I'm interested in how you get someone's attention and keep it, which is power over them. Or I'm interested in actual power itself. How do people wield power? How do social distinctions create a tension from which some people can grab power and other people give it up? Like ultimately, I think when anyone is communicating with another person, there's two dynamics that are going on. One is this need for cathartic expression and communion, right? I want to communicate with you, and I want to experience a catharsis and learn something about you and myself, where the whole becomes more than the sum of its parts. And at the same time, there's a tension against that, which is I want to take power from this relationship. I want to control it. It's a human instinct to try and control the conversation, or to try and figure out what the hierarchy is between me and this other person, where I fit into their hierarchy and they into mine. And this tension between this need for communion and this need to understand the power dynamic is fascinating to me. And it, I think, ultimately explains a lot of how we make decisions and why we make decisions. Like, you read some sentences that Michael Lewis writes, or David Foster Wallace, And there's no like special words. I mean, everyone makes a big deal of David Foster Wallace using big words, but look at his sentences where he names an emotion that you felt that no one has ever named before. Usually the reason why it's so good is not because like there's one word that jumps out, it's because it's this idea that almost makes the words disappear. Because you're reading this thing and you think like, oh, I felt that way. Like I know he's recreating the experience of feeling this way, and big words get in the way. If it's the right word, you don't know. I don't think you notice the word, right? Ersatz. The reason why I like the word ersatz is because in The Intuitionist, there's a sentence where the main character, who's an elevator inspector, walks into a lobby, and it talks about ersatz, marble. And I didn't know what the word ersatz meant, so I looked it up. And I thought that was a cool word because I love that book. And then I've gone back and I've reread the book. In fact, I'm not even certain that the word appears in there because I've looked for it. But like, the book, the parts I love most about that book are the parts that I can't remember any of the words because everything with those big words is overwritten. Like if it's a perfect word, it disappears into something bigger than itself. Oh yeah, everything has habits. I mean, anything with the basal ganglia. So there's a part of our brain that essentially, so without habits, we would all be slugs, right? We need, one of the most important things that animals did is they developed the ability to routinize behavior so they can do something critical and think about something else. Because otherwise, if you have to choose what you're going to eat every single day, you don't have time to invent fire or spears or aircraft carriers or video games. And so every single creature with higher functioning, even with not with lower functioning, creates habits. It's a necessary prerequisite for most types of evolution.